Hey, did you guys know that environment design nearly accounts for 80% of a player's first interaction in modern video games? And in film, concept artists can spend anywhere from 20 to 60 hours on a single environment keyframe. It's not just for the detail, but to craft the emotional and psychological tone of the story. But here's the part a lot of people miss. Every one of these immersive worlds starts with rough sketches and simple mock-ups. Concept design isn't about polish necessarily, it's about clarity. It's where artists explore shape, lighting, and mood just to lay the foundation for everything that follows. And before a world is built, it first has to be imagined. And that all starts with the concept. And that's what we're talking about here today. And the fun part today is that most of the examples in today's videos will just be from this last term, from my students in my design classes over at CGMA. The links will be below if you're interested in enrolling for this term or any upcoming ones. Now, what I really want to focus on today is the three-layered approach to environment design. The first is the primary read. Right? Think of all the big shapes, the things on screen that can hit and resonate with an audience within 3 seconds. It's that emotional impact that needs to clarify what the thing is. This is important, right? Because before your audience has time to analyze every little single detail that you spent all night putting into a piece, they are already going to feel something in regards to your work. That's the power of this primary read. Now, one of the best parts is that you can actually start this in a really simple way. You can take a singular piece of reference or try combining two pieces of references to build something new. And honestly, you can get more creative the less that these two things are not related. Just as with this Norwegian Viking-style house cross-mixed with a turtle, right? The possibilities are endless. And it's within this first phase is when your shape design comes together and becomes your strongest storytelling tool. The silhouette, the composition, the lighting contrast. All of these contribute to how your environment feels, even before the viewer knows specifically what they're looking at. This is established by combining shapes such as like the circle or the square or even like a triangle. Now it's how you light these shapes, how you utilize atmosphere that sets up that mood and that feeling. Is it inviting, ominous, or mysterious? Maybe it's even peaceful. And here's the thing, this is where most students kind of skip ahead. They want to jump right into these complex layouts. They want to tackle texture. They want to polish before nailing that really big idea. But a lot of experienced professionals will know better, right? The foundation is built, through thumbnailing, through representing your complex idea through really simple means. Maybe it's a simple tool. Maybe it's even just a simple diagram to represent something much more complex than it actually is. And that's why in these first weeks we focus mostly on shape design and how to add and subtract them together to build more and more complex forms. What's great about thumbnail sketching, specifically in the earlier weeks, is that the sketches are your sandbox. They're quick, they're small-scale experiments, and they let you test mood, structure, and even gauge clarity without committing to details too early. Think of them as visual brainstorming, right? The more variations you can create, the stronger your design language potentially can become. The best environments, in my opinion, aren't born from every little laborious detail. They're born from strong, clear decisions made in this first phase. So my biggest tip is to always start with shape, emotion, and silhouette. The feeling has to come first. Now, the second phase is this secondary read, right? Like all the medium shapes. This is what I call the functional layer, right? It's after that first emotional impression, that 3-second gut feeling, comes that secondary read. This is the moment where your viewer begins to ask, what's going on here? Who lived in this space? How does this actually work? This is where context and story start to unfold. This is a great opportunity to get more specific about everything that you've built upon up to this point. We are moving beyond the very simple forms through the construction of adding and subtracting them together. and to actually start exploring some of those tangible details. Artists today can either do this by drawing, painting, or using 3D. Any combination of these three work great. You're no longer just designing a pretty space, right? You're designing a place that has a sense of purpose. Maybe it was lived in, maybe it was fought over, maybe it was abandoned or repurposed, right? It's that sense of narrative that turns an environment into a world that feels a lot more believable. And it's usually in these phases I encourage my students to start asking themselves a lot of questions. What happened here, before the player or the story took us here? Who used this place? How did they use this place? Are there clues about the culture, the level of technology, or the mood of the world? Does the layout reflect a function, a ritual, a job, maybe a habit? Now think of great level design from a popular game that you may have played. How did the environment communicate information to you? Was it gritty? Was it improvised? Did it have a very clean or practical sort of feeling? Everything's intentional with good design. Everything has a use. Everything potentially has a story. And that's just the point here. The secondary read is where the world building comes alive. It's where things get real fun, like when a fortress can secretly house a giant mech, for instance. It's your job as the designer to leave these breadcrumbs, because when an environment feels functional and lived in, it stops just being a backdrop. It starts becoming part of that story. Now for the third part, let's talk about the tertiary read. These are the small details. These are what I think about how specific can we get about a particular prop or an environment itself. It's those subtle, hidden details that reward the curiosity of the player, maybe of a potential viewer who spent a little bit more than 3 seconds looking at your work. This is where world building thrives. Things you might miss maybe on your first playthrough, but that deepen the immersion. Fictional worlds are so much richer these days because of this. Like in this image here, right? The secret pigeon post tells the story of this shut-in recluse of a guy, and he just encrypts these secret messages all day, all night. These are finally, these details that I have to recommend to many students to avoid adding in until all these structural elements and components are in place first. These are finally the details that bring all the larger pieces together for a cohesive purpose. These are the subtle touches that bring a space to life and, most importantly, make it feel authentic. Think of things like worn furniture, cluttered desks, cracked windows, signs that someone has lived here and that has used the space. Personal items like photo frames, children's drawings, maybe a half-written note that can hint at a character's backstory. Now look at this example, right? This blank and simple scene can really be enriched with many details to make it fully relatable, right? It's an artist's studio. Or in this old futuristic home in the forest, show how details like moss growing through the floor, tools left mid-task, suggest time, history, and function. Even things like graffiti, trash cans, or broken lights can quietly tell you what kind of place this is. This is like getting students' work to just go beyond these very basic, like IKEA, overly staged like setups that just feel fake. Now, I have to say, of course, some environments can be more straightforward in this regard and others can be more subtle. I love all the details of this barely functioning boat interior that was recently, shown on a Fundamental Friday from Josh, right? It's the grit, it's the imperfections, it's the clutter that make this relatable. And I'm saying this, of course, because I just love environment design. It's a subject that matters a lot to me, and I try to teach my students that it's not just a background. It's not just background noise. They're not just decorative, they're the stage, they're the mood, they're the unsung hero of storytelling in games and in film. Great environment artists aren't just painters, they think like cinematographers, architects, and level designers all at once. They guide the player's eye, they shape the journey, and they often say more with atmosphere than dialogue ever could. So whether you're a concept artist, illustrator, or game developer, mastering the 3-layered approach to environment design just isn't optional, It's going to give you your creative edge. So next time you're watching a film or a game, try to analyze things, break things down. What are those layers? What is the emotional impact? What is the hidden aspect of the story? And take some notes. Guys, thank you very much for watching. Now drop me a comment below. Let me know one environment from a game or a movie that stuck with you long after the credits rolled. And for everything else, I have links below. I'll catch you guys next time. Thanks again.